We are reliving the madness of Purdue's iconic run to the 1999 NCAA title, and I have Carolyn Peck with me to do it all. Carolyn, you made history as the first Black woman to coach a team to an NCAA championship in 1909, becoming the first Big Ten team to win a title. So, looking back, just cutting down the nets, did you realize the gravity of what you have accomplished?
Autumn, I think at the time when it happened, probably not, because as the clock is ticking down and you're looking around at the women that were with you, that played for you, your staff that worked for you, you're more in that moment with the hard work and you start thinking back to what you did in June and July,
Yeah.
August in the preseason, and what built up to that moment. So it was right, where your feet are at that time. It wasn't until the end of the game and a reporter asked me, did I realize that I was the first African American woman to win a national championship?
Yeah.
And I told her I really hadn't thought about it, but I have an English teacher, Thelma McGann, who taught me with outlines. You don't have a one unless you're going to have a two.
Mhm.
So that's what meant the most to me because I remember watching C. Vivian Stringer and everything that she had done, and Marion Washington, Mariana Freeman. Like those were my role models of someone that looked like me that created the possibility that you could win, that you could have the opportunity. So, um, I stood on their shoulders, and that was big. And then I didn't even realize that Purdue won the first Big Ten championship after following what Lynn Dunn had done and bringing the team to a Final Four. Ohio State had been there with Katie Smith,
Mhm.
and when it was revealed to me that Purdue had also won the first Big Ten championship. I was so proud of that whole program that had supported us to get there.
This was a really special group. And in that same season, that championship season, you guys knocked off Tennessee, who at the time was the number one team in the nation, three-time champs coming in. What did you know about that group? And what did you see about that group that made them so special that ultimately were able to cut down the nets and celebrate everything that you guys accomplished in that year?
Autumn, if I can give you a little bit of background, because in the spring before, I got offered the job to go coach the Orlando Miracle.
Yep.
And so I'm really tight with my team and specifically my captains, Zukari Figs and Stephanie White. And when all this transpired, they were away with USA Basketball.
Mhm.
So I called Ukari first, and she said, well, I told her about the opportunity to go to Orlando. It'd always been a dream of mine to coach at the professional level, but at the time, I was thinking get an opportunity in the men's game because the WNBA was just now getting started off. But this situation presented itself, and Kari said, "Well, Carolyn," she said, "this would you will you each year that she's been in college, she's had a new coach."
Mhm.
And she said, and each year I've taken a step further. So if I get a new coach, I win a national championship. That stuck with me. And I'm like, okay, we're not going after a national championship without me.
Mhm.
Then I called Stephanie White. Stephanie was not as cordial. This is an Indiana girl
Yep.
who loves Purdue and, has been Miss Indiana basketball. And she said, no, you can't go. We have everything it takes to win a national championship.
Mhm.
The common thread was those two believed that we had what it took to win a championship. And when you look at the talent that I had with not only Steph and Kari, I had Katie Douglas, Camille Cooper, Michelle Duhart. I mean, I could go on down the list, Tiffany Young. And so when I made the decision that I was going to stay and coach that year, then Carol Stiff calls and says, Carolyn, we want you to play Tennessee in the first game of the season. And I'm thinking, are you nuts? I mean, I knew that they were coming off three consecutive national championships,
Right.
but you know what? If you're going to try to be the best, why not play the best? So I said, bring it on. So after that first game, and we beat Tennessee, and the focus that that team had going into that, I thought we had something pretty special.
I heard the locker room conversation after too, like how you really were so animated. Like they went on their runs, but you guys weren't afraid of nothing. Like you guys came in and took care of business. So that was really cool and inspiring just to hear and relive that moment. But having that call, knowing what was in front of you, but staying present, how did you navigate those emotions of leading Purdue to a championship game, knowing you would be transitioning into a new role after the season ended?
The best thing, Autumn, that could have happened to this team is we were able to take a trip overseas.
Mm,
And that international travel together, it really blocked out all the noise. It allowed us to focus on each other and reconnect. And like, don't ever let anybody tell you you can't learn something from young people,
mhm,
because the commitment that they demonstrated of sticking together, sticking by me in this process, because the media was out there. I was a lame duck coach. Were we going to be able to sign anybody because I wasn't going to be there? It didn't matter. And they protected me and I protected them. We'd go to press conferences and I would tell them, we are only going to talk about the Purdue Boilermakers.
yeah.
No questions about the Orlando Miracle. I was in Gainesville, Florida, and a reporter pushed me on it. And I warned him, I said, okay, that's one. And I'm not talking about the miracle. And if another one comes, this press conference is over. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what happened.
Oh,
And then when the players would go to the press conference, they would always talk about their commitment to me in this program. So it was a two-way street, and they just stayed focused along the way.
I love that. And just having that set focus in that moment about that particular team is special to hear. And I want to talk about that championship run because you had to go through a gauntlet to get there. Oral Roberts, Kansas, North Carolina, Rutgers, Louisiana Tech, and then Duke in the championship game. What do you remember most about that run? If there's a particular game, a particular moment, what could you tell us?
Well, I'll tell you a particular moment was with Robin Roberts and Mimi Griffith in the studio,
Mhm.
and they were making their predictions of teams as they make their run. And they said, if we got to the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight, and if we got by North Carolina, we were going to be toast.
Mm.
So, unbeknownst to me, after we win the Elite Eight game, my team in the locker room have toast. So it was something that they had in their mind. It was like all you needed to do was poke the bear with this group, and they were ready to go. Then once we got to the Final Four, see, the previous year we had made it to the Elite Eight,
Mhm.
but we lost to Louisiana Tech. We had a lead going into the half of that game, and then Louisiana Tech came out like gangbusters and just
Yeah.
took it from us. So in the final game of 99, when we're playing against Duke, we're behind at the half.
Mhm.
And I go into the coach's locker room at halftime and talking to them, and they're talking strategy. We need to do this, we need to do that. And that moment of the Elite Eight came back to me. Now, Steph and Kari sit right in front of me. My captain's in front, and then everybody from there out and behind. And I looked at them and I said, y'all, we're exactly where we want to be.
Mhm.
And the two of them looked at me like I'm crazy. We don't want to be behind. And I reminded them, I said, you remember last year in the Elite Eight? And after halftime, Louisiana Tech took it from us. We're about to do the same thing to Duke. And Steph jumped up and choice words that I won't repeat right now, but said, yeah. And everybody like rallied behind. And that second half, just the defensive intensity that turned up with Kari and Steph and Tiffany Young came in, Camille Cooper. They were just huge
Yeah.
down the stretch. And then I'm like, okay, we're rolling. And then Steph went down with the ankle injury. And it was amazing to look at this team, how they rallied around Steph, helped her off the court. I put Kelly Kamara in, and they never wavered.
Mhm.
Like they were on a mission, kept moving forward. And then the last 7 seconds, Katie Douglas, before her freshman year, lost her father to cancer, and
Mm,
she stayed committed to come to play for us at Purdue. And as the last 7 seconds are ticking down, she's dribbling the ball out.
mhm.
And I thought, how perfect
Yeah.
for us to win a national championship, a kid from Indiana,
Yeah.
Meridian High School, to be able to dribble out the clock as her team is getting ready to be crowned national champions.
You can't write that any better. And just everyone's story coming together, fighting for one another, one of your sisters as well. I was gonna ask you a moment that gives you chills, but that gave me chills in itself. Was there anything else that had you in awe in that moment when you were climbing up to cut down the nets? Take me through the emotions of that, what you've accomplished.
Well, I'll tell you, in climbing that ladder, I remembered when Purdue offered me the job because Nell Fortner was going on to coach the Olympic team.
Hmm.
And I turned it down the first time because I thought I've only been a restricted earnings coach for 2 years at Tennessee, an assistant 1 year at Kentucky, and then an assistant 1 year at Purdue. And now they want me to be the head coach of a Big Ten team. And I called Pat Summitt
Mm,
and I said, Pat, I don't know if I can do this. I'm not ready. And she looked at me. Well, she was talking on the phone. She paused, and then she said, Carolyn, where do you want to get ready? You want to go back and coach junior college, high school, or do you want to prepare on the biggest stage in a great conference? And she said, I've worked with you. I know you will get ready.
mm,
And, who would have thought in my second year as the head coach, I would be cutting down those nets? I also thought about my staff,
yeah.
and we were all young. We celebrated every victory throughout the season like it was the national championship because we were like, look what's happening. It was
Yeah.
like nose to the grind and the results would provide itself.
Yeah.
And with all of that, and then that team,
Mm,
because when I first got the job, Stephanie White and Akari Figs came and sat in my office. And, when two players come in your office and shut the door, you're like, uh-oh.
mm,
They sat down across from my desk and they said, Coach, what do you need us to do?
mm.
And so when you have team leaders, you've got a great staff. It was truly a family. When I got up to the top, I wasn't just cutting down that net for myself, but for all of them, and to have my parents, my niece. Was the only niece I had at the time. She was there. You just start thinking about your
Yeah.
family that has supported you through from AAU basketball to that point. All of that kind of just comes together as you're climbing each rung of that ladder.
And then when you cut the net, you had the net and you cut a piece of it to keep that tradition going now with Dawn Staley.
I do have to give a shout out. The other African American woman that won a national championship is Carolyn Peck. And Carolyn Peck, a few years ago, when she was commentating, she gave me a piece of her net, her national championship net, and she told me to keep it. And I've had it in my wallet for years. And she said, when you win your national championship, just return it. And, I'm going to have to pass a piece of my net on to somebody else so they can share and hopefully accomplish something as big as this. So I do have to give a shout out to Carolyn Peck, and I will return her net, thankfully.
Michelle?
Seeing that she's now giving other pieces of her net that she has to other coaches. I want to know that all started from you. What sparked that idea to give Dawn Staley a piece of your national championship net?
In 95, when I was a restricted earnings coach at Tennessee, I left the next year in 96 and went to Kentucky. Well, in 96, Tennessee won the national championship. I was at the Final Four watching. I was sitting with my friends in the Tennessee section. And when Tennessee won it, Passion Thompson, who had been one of my post players at Tennessee, called me down to the floor. So I came down to the floor and Passion went up to the top, and I noticed that she cut two pieces of the net. And she came over after she came down the ladder and walked over to me and gave me a piece of the net. And she said, I want you to keep this till you win one of your own.
Yeah.
I kept that net tied on every tennis shoe I had. It got raggedy, it was torn. But if I put on a new pair of tennis shoes, that net transferred over. It was going everywhere that I went. So in 2015, and as I have been able to cover South Carolina and watch what Dawn was doing,
Mhm.
you just get this feeling when you see what's happening, the connection on the floor, the progress that is happening before you, that they had something special. And I felt like I knew what that meant for Passion to believe in me. And I just, after a shoot around, I went over to Dawn and I gave her the net. And I just told her, I said, I want you to keep this until you win one of your own.
Mhm.
And that was in 2015. In 2017, I was not working the Final Four. I was home.
Mhm.
And friends of mine we were in Mount Juliet at a sports bar watching the Final Four, had a nice little table outside.
Mhm.
And as I'm watching the clock tick down and I'm seeing that South Carolina is going to do it, just the pride that I had. We're jumping around, celebrating, and then all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? Well, that's when Dawn went to the press conference and pulled that piece of the net
Yep,
out.
I
It
remember.
was a moment when I gave it to, it was just a private moment between the two of us.
Mhm.
But Dawn, in Dawn's ways, shares.
Yeah.
And it was like she was sharing her national championship with me
Mhm.
as I had shared my net with her. And then as Dawn does, she took it a whole nother level in sharing her piece of the net
Yeah.
with coaches all across the country. She's meant a lot to me because, Autumn, I'll be honest with you, when we won it in 99, it was kind of forgotten about because I don't think that it was really a big deal because Tennessee and Connecticut weren't there.
Mm.
And I felt like in 2017, when Dawn pulled out that net, she validated
Yeah.
that championship and reminded people of what we did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just a special moment between two powerhouses. And I see you as one of the trailblazers in this sport. And when you're talking about standing on the shoulders of others, like that's what I'm doing with you as a sports broadcaster and everything that you've been able to do. I'm so glad that that moment happened, and Dawn Staley brought that to light because we can't forget about how we got here. And that is you. That attributes to you what you've been able to do and how you've been able to transcend this sport. I want to know from your perspective, like what has it been like to be a part of today's game and just to witness all of the growth of women's basketball from now your lens as a sports broadcaster and just of course one of the trailblazers here in women's basketball.
It's been a vision that I have always seen as a possibility. Before women's basketball was on TV as much as it is,
Hmm.
I was seeing the talent that wasn't getting coverage,
Yeah.
that wasn't exposed. And I was like, it was kind of like Field of Dreams. If you will build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And the infrastructure that started being built to be more available to the public. And once people got a taste of it, they have loved it.
Hmm.
And so now, just in the last couple of years, at Purdue, when we would drive up and we would play Illinois, people would be lined up outside, right? Now, when you go to LSU, South Carolina, it was the case at Baylor, Texas, like when you go across the country to all these different, what's happening with UCLA and USC, like it is the ticket to have.
Hmm.
Like that is, I have so much pride in where our game has evolved to. I mean, it's exciting on TV. I'm on the plane. I got me. Everybody thought this, well, it's just women watching women. No,
Yeah.
men have fallen in love with women's basketball as well. And they're asking me questions. I was just telling my husband the other day, I'm going to have to get a protective screen on my laptop because when I'm working and they see it's basketball, I start getting all the questions about
Yes. Yeah.
women's basketball. I mean, and I don't mind it because it's great because they want to talk about women's basketball, but The thing that I want the country to not allow to happen is to go backwards.
Mm,
I have said for years that you have football, basketball, men's basketball. I mean, how much more blood can you squeeze out of that turnip?
yeah.
Women's basketball is a revenue sport if you invest in it.
Mhm.
And when you look at the sellout crowds that are happening, the ticket prices, it's not like they're giving away tickets to fill these stands. People are paying the money. It has great value. And I remember a long time ago when Gino was talking about ticket prices at Connecticut, and he said, you have to hold the value.
Mm,
If you hold the value, people will pay to come and see it because it's a product worth viewing, and it is. I mean, you look at the ratings, you look at the attendance across the board, the excitement, the women in television commercials.
yes.
It's amazing. I
Yeah.
just love it.
And it's here to stay. Carolyn Peck, thank you so much for everything that you do for the sport, everything that you stand for, and just being inspiration as a coach, as a broadcaster, and as a person. And thank you for reliving the madness with me for Purdue's just iconic runs, that 1999 title.
Thank you, Autumn. Thanks for having me. This has been fun.